Hi there once again and welcome to another Expresso mechanic tutorial, and this is episode 10 in the series of Python Bytes. In this one we're going to be taking a look at while loops. Are they your friend or are they your enemy? That's what we're about in this tutorial, so without further ado, let's see if we can make this happen. On the screen we have a 10 by 10 array of clones, which I've created over here simply by throwing a cube, which is 20 by 20 by 20, fillet radius of 0.5, and I've thrown that into the cloner, set it up as a grid array, and 10 by 10 in the X and Z, and 21 by 21 in X and Z, and that's as much as I've really done there. And then the transform window, I've just set the display to index values just briefly, just to make things a little bit more clear. I've opened my Python effector in the editor window here, and as you can see, things are not quite the way they used to be. I'm now using my shiny new version of Cinema 4D, which is of course S26. Now we can see that in the main loop here we've got this bool function. I don't quite know why this is there. Mine is not to reason why, so I'm not going to ask any questions about it. And it's slightly different in the setup up here. Again, I don't know why this has happened. I don't know why there's any reason for that. But anyway, it doesn't really affect us. But moving on from here, what I'm going to do is just start doing a bit of coding here and just say import random at the top, because I'm going to be using random numbers in this example. Down here, car for the color array is equal to, and then just copy this and paste it in, and at the end I can just take away matrix and add color. So that gives us a color array, and down here copy this, paste it in there, once again color here and car here. So that will make sure our color array is updated along with our matrix array. These two lines, as per usual, can be ignored. What I also need to add though is the frame variable that I so often add. So I will say frame is equal to dot get time, get frame dot get FPS open double close to get our frames from the timeline. And then finally I'm going to say global randoms. Moving on from here, I can say if frame is equal to 0, randoms is equal to an empty list. And now we're ready to continue from here. Before we actually start looking at while loops, let's just take a quick look at for loops. So what I'll do, I'm going to do this with functions. I'm going to say define, and I'll say for underscore loop, open close colon. And in my function here, I'm going to say for I in range brackets CNT for count. So starting from 0, we're going to sequence through all of our clones until we reach the count value, which of course is going to be 100. So in here we can then say x is equal to, and it will be mar brackets I dot off dot x, y is equal to 20, and z is equal to, and I'll copy this part, paste it in here, take away the x and place a z at the end. I can then say if, and I'm going to do this with the modulo, so what I'm going to do here is select every third clone and raise it by 20. That's what I'm going to be doing. So if I percentage for modulo is equal to 3 is equal to 0, then we can say mar brackets I dot off is equal to C4D dot vector, and it will be brackets X, comma Y, comma Z. And that defines our for loop. So down here we can call it, so if we say for underscore loop open close, we'll call that for loop. So let's see what happens when we do. And straight away, as I said, every third clone, well, from 0 and then every third clone, we do get them raised by 20. And that gives us a nice pattern. Okay, so why are we doing this? I'll tell you what I'm going to do just before we go any further. Let's take away the index values because we don't really need those anymore. So why have I chosen to do this? Well, the for loop is, I'm just really trying to illustrate here that the for loop is actually very docile. It's a loop that's never going to cause you any problems because it just literally counts from 0, or not necessarily 0 actually, we can of course control that, but we're going from 0 to the count value here. And that's as much as it's going to do. It's just going to keep on sequencing until it gets to this count value. So there's no way that it's going to cause you any headaches. It's just, it is what it is. And of course, if we want to stop it earlier, we can put a condition in and say if, let's say if I is equal to 10, break. We can say that if we wish. So execute that, and now we just get the first row. Of course, we don't even really need to say that. What we can simply say up here, just change the range, 0,10. Execute that, and we get the same thing. It hasn't changed because that's the same thing. So, you know, there are ways that you can control the for loop, and of course we could say 10,20, and we get the second row. So it's a very versatile in as much as you can control it in a number of different simple ways. But as I said, a very docile loop that's never ever going to cause you any headaches. However, the same is not necessarily true for the while loop. So we'll take a look at that next. I'll create two while loops. I'll say, let's have a look. Define safe while. I'll do that one first. Just put pass in there for the moment. And I'll also do define dangerous while. Leave that at that so they're not too much of a mouthful. And again, I'll just put pass within there for the minute. Now, in my safe while loop here, I'll say while len randoms is less than 10. Random, or rather RND, I think I'll say RND just to make that shorter, is equal to random dot rand int 0,99. So we can choose at random any one of our clones. I'll then say if RND is not in randoms, randoms dot append RND. And that completes the first small part of this while loop function. And it should be a case of so far, so good. So if we come down here, just comment that out, and we call this function. So we'll say safe underscore while. Let's see what happens now. So everything's reset, which means we're okay. We can still run the timeline, so there's no problems. We don't see anything, of course, because we haven't done anything with our randoms yet, but everything is good thus far. So we've got a group of randoms. What we can do, in fact, to prove that, what we can do here is to say print randoms. And this is never a bad idea, actually. If you're not sure what's going on, just print a variable and see what happens. Execute it, and you can see that we've actually got them. It's scouted through them, and now we've got them. So we've got a list of 10 completely different numbers. And that's what we want. So moving on from here, we can say for I in range len randoms and we can say mar, or rather let's do car. We said we'd use the color array, so car brackets I equals, in fact it should be car randoms brackets I double close, oops, not that, double close, is equal to cinema 4d dot vector, and it will be brackets, and I will say 1 comma 0.5 comma 0, so we'll get orange clones. Right, let's see what happens if we do it now, and straight away we get a group of orange clones, and that's working perfectly well. So this is safe. Why have I said that this is safe? Well, it is perfectly safe because there's nothing really controlling it apart from this random value here. So all the time our random values are not within our random list, we can place them in there. If they are in the random list, then we just generate another random number, and we just keep on doing this until the length of randoms is equal to 10. So it's a safe scenario. Nothing is going to cause the computer to hang here. Absolutely nothing. Because all of this will just keep on going until we've got 10 values. And once we hit 10, the while loop is going to break, and that's it. It just resolves. Then we can move on to the next piece of code, which is of course the for loop. So it's all perfectly safe, all of this, and that's why I've called this the safe while. Now in the dangerous while, we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to say counter, if I can spell it correctly, counter is equal to 0. We're then going to say while counter is less than or equal to 10 on this occasion. And then we're going to start doing some work in here. Now, this protocol is, of course, a little bit back to front with what you're used to, because this is a local variable, technically, that belongs to while, and yet it's not inside while, but this is the protocol for doing it. So while the counter is less than 10, we can then say if counter is equal to 5, and we'll do something here. Straight away I'm going to come up here and copy this, and I'm going to paste it under this piece of code. Just indent those two as well, it's the same level. So we'll get that sorted out, and then we'll also do something similar to what we've done in the for loop, but not quite the same. I'm going to say mar, and in fact what I need to do here is just change the value. So I'm going to say we'll use the 11th clone. Let's just work with the 11th clone. So mar brackets 11, and it will be dot off equals, and it will be again c4d.vector xyz. So we'll copy that from up there and paste it in here. Okay, the next thing we need to do though is increase the counter by 1. So we need to say counter plus equals 1. Let's just give this a go and see if anything's working. What we need to do is just comment this one out, and then we can call dangerous while. So dangerous underscore while open close, and let's see what happens this time. Now straight away it works, and it works fine. Our 11th clone has raised up, or our 12th clone actually, because we count from 0 to 11, so it's clone 12 actually that's raised up. Okay, so that's exactly what we wanted it to do. So let's take a look at the protocol here. We set the counter at the same level as the while, just above it, and we then said while counter is less than 10. We did a process, and then at the same indent level we put the counter plus equals 1. This is essential. If we were to put the counter anywhere else, so if we put it here, and I'm not going to hit execute, but if we put it there, we've created a logical error because the counter can never ever be increased while the counter is less than 10. So if the counter is 5, well, the counter's got to get to 1 before it can get there. So this is not going to be looked at, is it? It's going to hit this line and say if counter is equal to 5, oh, it isn't equal to 5. So I need to jump down below anything that's kept inside this code. So it's never going to get to the counter plus equals 1. And this is where while loops can be dangerous. If you set this up wrongly, you're going to hang the computer. And there'll be nothing you can do except to come down to here and force Cinema 4D to quit. That's all you can do. So you've got to be very careful how you set this up. Always make sure, the golden rule is when you set a while up with a counter, always make sure that you update the counter 1 indentation away from the while so that it doesn't belong to anything other than the while. That's essential, okay? So moving on from here, we can actually set another condition in here. We can say if counter is equal to 7, let's say. And in here we can say again counter is equal to 0 while counter is less than 10 or less than or equal to 10. Let's make it exactly the same as we did before. And let's do something a little bit different. We can say car and we'll say 30 plus counter is equal to, and it will be C4D dot vector once again, and this time we'll make them a different color. Let's just say 1, 1, 0. That'll make them yellow this time. And then down here at the same level we can say counter plus equals 1. So now we've got a counter within a counter, or a while, or I should say a while loop within a while loop, a nested while loop. But we're using 2 counters and they're both called counter, which is perfectly okay. and they're both being incremented at the end of each while loop. Now let's see if this works. And it does. What we should really say is less than 10 there because we only want a single line. So let's just say less than 10. I was right the first time. But you can see that that's worked perfectly well. And once again, I've followed the same protocol. So you can do this. You can actually nest them. It's not a problem. And they can both have counters, which are the same if you wish to. But it can get a bit confusing if you do this, and you could end up making a mistake. So again, follow this golden rule. The counter, the while at the same level as the counter, and then the counter update 1 indent away from the while, never any further. However, let's just see what happens. If I indent it here, what's going to happen now? Do you think it's going to hang the computer? Well, let's see. No, it doesn't. It doesn't hang the computer. All that happens is that the console tells us we've got an unexpected indent error. And of course, the reason is that this line of code doesn't have a colon at the end of it. The counter is not the property of this line of code because it's not saying if, and it's not saying a for loop or anything like that where you'd put a colon at the end and say that any code that follows beneath this is the property of it. It's like like the while loop here. So while counter is less than 10, colon, anything here is the property of the while loop. But this here, it doesn't have any code that belongs to it because it doesn't have a colon after it and there's no if statement or anything like that in front of it. So on that occasion, it didn't hang the computer. But it certainly would if this was an if statement. If there was a condition attached here and we put it inside the condition, then definitely it will hang the computer. So there you go. They're the golden rules for using a while loop with a counter and the ways that you can avoid hanging your computer. Of course, if you're still a bit unsure when you do one of these, all you've got to do is save your work, and then run the loop. And if you have made a mistake, well, yeah, it'll hang the computer, but no worries because you've got the work saved. So no problem at all if you do that and you just follow these sort of simple rules. But anyway, that's about what I wanted to show you in this tutorial. So I hope it's been worthwhile doing it and you've got something out of it. And if you have, then please give the video a like. And if you haven't already, then please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and of course ring the bell. And wherever you happen to be on social media, please share this video, because all of this great stuff helps to keep the channel moving in the right direction. But anyway, that just about brings the curtain down on this one, so I'll see you very soon on the next tutorial.